Okay, great. Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us again and coming to watch another one of our sort of Skills Hive network lockdown stories. As we've said, everyone's had a very different experience of um, what lockdown has been all about. Hang on, let me configure my screen if I can remember how to do that. Uh, so that it's recording as well as I'd like it. Cool, there we go. So yeah, today I'm joined by Elina. Elina Gibbons Plowright, is that correct? Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's
Oh, look,
correct.
hang on, it's just come up on screen. I'm sure that wasn't there a second ago. And so Eleanor's a marketing professional, been working in the marketing sort of sector for what, 5 years?
Yeah, about 5 years.
5 years. And so yeah, I mean, let's kick things straight off. I mean, lockdown, this period of lockdown, which we seem to be sort of coming out of, but not quite. It's been very different for different people. So what's it been like for you?
Yeah, I thought I'd sort of like sit down and have a chat with you because I think I've got quite a like sort of important lockdown story to share, in the sense like obviously I'm a young person and there's been lots of sort of think pieces and things coming out about how young people might end up being disproportionately affected, sort of with the changes to the economy and that sort of impact. And for me especially, I was also impacted by the sort of new starter like loophole in the furlough job retention
Yeah,
scheme.
yeah.
So
So what,
I
what what sort of situation were you in then? I mean, what's I don't know. Ground zero was what, March sort of time?
yeah, so it was sort of about like mid-March. I was actually told that they were unable to keep me in my position on the 19th of March, and my start date was the 3rd. So I think they let me go sort of 2 days into the sort of working from home quarantine initiated by the government.
Mm.
But then similarly to lots of other people in my position, I had secured that job offer at the beginning of February. I
Right.
was just simply unable to start until the
Yeah.
beginning of March. So when the sort of job retention scheme came out and we realised we wouldn't be eligible, it was heartbreaking not only for myself but actually for the company that employed me, because they'd been keen for me to start. That month we'd had a really close working relationship even during that time over email, that we were so keen for it to begin that
Yeah.
it was sad for them to let me go too.
Have you been able to keep that going? Are you still in touch with them?
Yeah, so they were a really great company actually, and which just sort of made it hit harder because partly felt like I'd sort of found where I belonged after a few
Right.
years of trying to seek that out. But I'm still in touch with my direct line manager. We're hoping to meet up once like lockdown has eased, and of course in a dream world they say they'd always love to have me back one day when they're in a similar position to what they were when they hired
Mm.
me. But you're looking at a company that was having their best 6 months ever prior to COVID-19 hitting, and now are in a position where they've got to sort of gain that back again.
Was it quite a mature company or was it quite a new company?
Quite a new company, I guess, in sort of an overall sense.
Yeah.
Very much a sort of startup atmosphere. It wasn't
Okay.
that many staff, about 30 staff members.
But do you see them recovering quickly, or who's to say? I suppose it's really hard to tell at this
Yeah,
stage, right?
exactly that. I think it's really difficult to tell, and working with a lot of marketing agencies is what we did. A vast amount of marketing nowadays is like very experiential, so sort of pop-up shops,
Mm.
events and things like that. And who can tell when that whole events industry is going to kickstart again.
Okay. So what else have you been doing in the meantime then? But I know other people I've spoken to, certainly those that aren't able to focus on their work or their job. So um, you mentioned when we just spoke before we were recording that you have still been looking for other work, right?
Yeah, so as much as it has been a struggle, especially sort of being fresh back into having a job after having some time off looking for the role previously, it did felt like, oh, I was starting sort of from the beginning again.
Mm.
As well, there's the job market at the moment has really stagnated.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
massively.
there's been a few sort of first stage telephone interviews before I've been notified that they've actually decided they're not going to hire anyone at the moment and they're going to
Nice.
push it back,
Yeah.
till later in the year. And then a few companies who have job postings up that haven't taken them down because it's obviously not top of their priorities at the moment. So
Okay.
you're applying for sort of, I guess, ghost jobs that don't actually
Yeah.
exist anymore.
Didn't even think of that. Yeah, that must be frustrating as well.
Yeah.
I mean, this must have been quite a difficult thing to come to terms with. I mean, furlough is a difficult enough concept to sort of get your head around, but actually sort of, as you say, falling between what's available, it must be even harder, right?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of, a, in a sense, a little bit of a kick in the teeth because when my company let me go, there was no hard feelings, there was no animosity. I understood the difficult position they'd been put in. They felt terrible about having to make that decision and let me go. I felt terrible that they were now in a position where financially they were looking at some difficulties. So when this government scheme was announced, we really kind of wanted to remain sort of cautiously optimistic at first. And it was just really sad all round. And it seems to me that the date they've put in, I think it was, an anti-fraud measure, just seems like very arbitrary, considering most people who are new starters they have a paycheck, they've paid tax on that paycheck. So the evidence is there. I feel like the only fix was to have developed a system similar to that for the self-employed, where we provide our own evidence, such as signed contracts, email dated, that sort of information, and paychecks to get some sort of money from the government ourselves and not through our employer.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, part of me thinks they did really well to get something in place so quickly. Having spoken to a number of other people, not in this sort of context, I've definitely heard stories of elements of the way it was designed that were less generous than they look at face value. I don't want to get myself into any trouble here, but there were certainly some dates involved that sort of definitely meant that it was difficult for a large group of people to make it work. I can't remember which scheme that related to, but in the main though, I think the fact that things that usually take years to put in place were done in weeks, shows a positive intent from the UK government, but for me, B, shows that innovation actually can be done much quicker in general, and why hasn't it
definitely
been like that in the past, right?
Definitely.
So what else have you been up to then, and in this time, how have you sort of kept yourself from dwelling on that situation, and what sort of positives have you been able to sort of focus on?
Well, I guess for me, it's just been really relishing and enjoying the time I now get to spend with my close family. So I'm, lucky to be in a position where I'm currently living with my parents and my boyfriend. So it's sort of financially, in terms of being let go, at least I don't have much outgoings. I've got a roof over my head. And it is really lovely to spend the time with them. I think when we look back on this time, in a few years when my parents are perhaps a bit older, I think I'm truly going to be so grateful for all of this time we've been able to spend together.
I mean, do you think that's part of the new normal, perhaps, that people who didn't value that sort of time in the past, either they were just too busy or they had other priorities? Do you think that those changes in priorities are going to have a long-term effect on the way you live your life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always been pretty family orientated anyway. It's something that means a lot to me. I'm always going to make time for my parents and for my brothers and things. But I do think perhaps some people that wouldn't have previously, thought that it was important to get home for dinner time, or because of where their office is located and how long their commute is, perhaps can't make it home for dinner time. And I think now they might really be enjoying this time and really relishing in the whole sort of remote working aspect of it all.
That's a good point. Did remote working feature for you previously when you in your roles?
No, not so much actually. Previous jobs I've been in have been in very sort of traditional sectors. So I've worked in finance and legal. So I think in both of those sectors, I think they're quite slow to sort of adapt to change and sort of new ideas. On the whole, I'm not speaking for everyone, but actually, even in my last position, the one that unfortunately I was let go from, very sort of modern startup. But because of that, I think people really enjoy the office sort of vibes and being together with their colleagues. And having spoken to some of them since, I know they're really, really missing the office atmosphere, that collaboration and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, you can't replace that. Absolutely. And would you consider a different mix then in future roles?
Yeah, I think it's kind of always, I think the kind of key is, or at least for me as a worker or when I've been looking for jobs previously, it's just having that sort of flexibility and the ability to kind of choose your, I guess, working hours or how you want to work, because I think there's no harm in it. Now we've all known that it's possible to work remotely. If that's somebody's preference, then I think it's brilliant to be able to, for them to work a couple of days a week from home, sometime in the office, but also having like flexible hours. It's been something that a few companies have adapted and have been doing for a while now. But whether that will become more popular, because I think a lot of the plans for people going back to the office, it is sort of staggering the arrival times. So some people arriving earlier and leaving earlier, and some people arriving later and staying later and things like that. And I wonder if actually that period of time while half the office are in and things like that is actually going to be what people move forward with.
Yeah, I think it'd be a period of learning as well, won't it? Of what works for what type of person, and what are the options that can be provided that account for everyone, and then the sort of cadence or rhythm of that should fall into place quite organically, shouldn't it, really? You'd like to think anyway. Yeah, I mean, certainly in my experience, being able to work flexibly, and not just since I started my own business, but previously, because I was in a field-based role in sort of sales and marketing. Yeah, it's really hard to clear down your emails or your messages or whatever platforms you're using when it's just being topped up all the time and you've got conversations that need your attention now. Whereas working in the evening, you can go, okay, well, now I know, I can see what's a priority. Let me clear down some things. Here's what I'm going to focus on tomorrow. And you have time to think that through rather than be trying to answer the phone at the same time or whatever it is, right?
Yeah, of course, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, well, look, I mean, anything else in terms of what you think a return to work might look like for you, and you know, is there anything about, has this perhaps even given you a bit of space to think, look, this looked like my ideal job and hopefully that's going to still happen, but actually let me explore all my other options? I mean, what sort of jobs have you been looking for?
Well, yeah, I guess it's an interesting one, because I would say that you were completely on the right lines there. But however, what happened prior to me getting this job was I was made redundant in October of last year.
Right.
So following that redundancy was when I sort of thought, I'm not going to rush into anything, because at that point we definitely still had the luxury, or at least I did, of thinking, oh, when I get my head down and I start applying for jobs, I'll have one in only a matter of time. So I got this offer to move to the south of France for a couple of months, to be an au pair for some family friends of mine. And it was something I'd always wanted to do. So I went off and did that. And that gave me some time to think. And coming back in January, I really took my time with the job hunt. I thought, as I said previously, been kind of spent the past few years trying to find my feet and think about what kind of organization I really want to work in. Where am I going to be most sort of respected, and where are my skills going to be sort of most valued? So that was when I sort of took that time. And yes, obviously that led me to find the job I did beginning in March. So having had that time previously, I think I do have a really good idea of the type of place I want to work.
So other people are they've had an opportunity now to be where you were sort of 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah, exactly.
So close to good timing.
I know, exactly. So that's kind of the thing. A lot of people close to me and things have all said, I'll like take this time and things. I said, You're completely
done that.
right. Yeah, you're completely right. I just, unfortunately, I did that for about 4 months before March. But yeah, I guess looking forward for me, it's just really trying to keep an eye on when the job market's going to pick up, because what could happen right now is, although I have had this time to think about what I really want, again, before I did have the luxury to sort of pick and choose and turn down an offer here, and whereas now there's the sort of pressure of, do you take the first thing you can get? And already I'm being a lot more flexible on sort of like salary expectations. Like before I was very sort of strict on, no, this is what I'm looking for. And if they don't meet this offer, and that type of thing. Whereas now I'm sort of thinking, well, we're lucky that this company are even hiring. So should there be some more flexibility around that?
Is salary the number one criteria?
For me, it's an important criteria, definitely, as I think it is for everyone. I think one thing I have learned from my career is salary is often not a good marker for workload or how stressful your job's going to be or how much you're going to enjoy it. You can't know those things until you're actually in the role. Some of the earliest jobs I had in my career were some of the most stressful, time consuming jobs I've done for the lowest pay. So I just think, especially being a woman in the workforce, it's really about knowing your worth and sticking to that, because often we do undervalue ourselves and we're afraid to ask for like a bonus or sort of maneuvering on what we're gonna ask for, because perhaps we have had some time out, whether that's chosen leave or maternity leave. I think women are more nervous about asking for higher pay.
Okay. And so let's think about the bigger picture then. And I think that's a really important element of the bigger picture of economics in general, and what value exists beyond just monetary value. And there is value in giving people the freedoms to do those other important life things when you're at that stage of life, and grow from there, and become a person with more experience that's able to give even more value. And it's not always recognized in that sort of context. But the third part of these discussions is always about this notion of economic recovery. In the media, it's all been about lockdown, then it's about return to work, and then economic recovery. And I just sort of thought it'd be interesting to explore what you think that actually means, and what might that mean to you.
Yeah, I guess with economic recovery, I guess comes jobs, because a lot of when I speak to my parents and stuff, lots of people speak about the 2008 recession and people that graduated then and there were no jobs. My dad graduated university during a recession, so they're both sort of understanding that jobs are not going to be the easiest to get right now, and they're hopefully going to be in a position where they can support me financially in some way. But without kind of bars and restaurants being open, yes, when it comes to young people like me, how much money are we actually currently putting into the economy? Because we can't go out and spend our disposable income. We're not buying our avocado on toast anymore.
Drinkable income, right?
yeah. But there's different things. So when I've been looking at the news and stuff, it's the best time for first-time buyers now at the moment. They're apparently most likely to be able to buy a property kind of right now in this like economic uncertainty. So if that's something you're looking to do right now, then that's sort of brilliant, as long as you haven't been too impacted financially with everything else.
Was that part of your plans previously?
Yeah, like I guess it's something that's always weighing on somebody of like my age as mine. I can't speak for everyone. It's not a plan I have in the near future, of course. I'm currently unemployed, but but yeah, I think that's definitely, you could ask any young person and just go, have you thought about how difficult it might be to one day own your own property? And I'm pretty certain it would have crossed most people's minds at some point.
Is it even something that you aspire to? I mean, some people, it seems to me, it's not even important owning a property.
Well, I think for me it is, for in a sense that you're going to have eventually an asset out of it.
Mm.
It's something you own and you're responsible for. You can create a home that you've always, dreamed of. And actually, when you sort of look at the government sort of, I guess, policies been put in place to protect people who own their homes and like mortgage holidays and things like that,
Right.
compared to what's been put in place to protect renters and things, you are still underneath, I guess, somebody else. So if
Mm.
I was still renting a property, I'd be terrified right now,
Yeah.
having lost my job, because I can't be evicted, but I'm
Yeah.
still going to put tension between me and my landlord or landlady.
Yeah.
And I think it would be having actual sort of freedom, in the sense, obviously mortgage payments are something that needs to be on top of, but you are solely responsible for that, and you're not sort of at the will of somebody else. And I think that's what a lot of people really like.
That's definitely still very much part of the current paradigm is, get a job, buy a house, have a family, etc. But some of that is not always, you know, attainable in the same way as it was previously. I mean, house prices being the main example, but also, I'm in a position where I have a mortgage, I have a house, but I'm sort of also in a position where I'm thinking I might never pay that mortgage off. It may not happen.
Yeah, just
And whereas previously it was, well, how quickly can you pay it off? And and what are you going to do next? Are you going to buy another one? It's like,
no,
well,
of course,
doesn't
yeah.
really. But there we go. All right. Well, look. Any final thoughts on the future, the big picture future? I mean, I I I, I'm interested in also. I think this gives us a chance to think about, you know, blue sky thinking. Do you know what
Yeah,
I
I
mean?
know, I was about to say, I think like perhaps
But
that's slightly differing at the moment. Like, I think my attitude, as wonderful as yours is very much like take every day as it comes.
yeah,
I don't think I have the sort of like luxury right now of thinking
no, of
like,
course,
oh, like, the
yeah,
next role I'm gonna have is everyone's gonna be my
no,
best friend, and we're gonna, and all this, and because at the moment I think it's just I need that sort of job, and I don't want
yeah,
to
of
be
course,
unemployed for too long and things like that,
absolutely,
because there's a lot to be said, I think, and people rightly try and reassure you and say, well, everyone's going to understand come 6 months, come 9 months, come next year, that people have been affected by COVID-19, and they're going to understand that there's a gap in the CV. But at the end of the day, you will be competing with people that were furloughed or did continue working.
yeah,
So there's still going to be that competitive edge to the market, and you don't want to be left behind.
yeah. No, I get that. I get that. I don't like it. I don't like
I
that. That's
know.
the context of it all. But I get it.
Yeah.
Have you done, just a quick question? Have you done any, like, I know you're passionate about a number of sort of things and causes and stuff. Have you done any volunteering or anything in the past? Not necessarily now, but
Yeah, I've volunteered in the past, but you'd be, in terms of trying to volunteer during
yeah. No,
this.
wasn't so much thinking of that. I was thinking more along the lines of, again, going back to sort of big picture stuff, ideas that have come up previously, like a universal income, that sort of thing, that
Yeah.
give you time to do some voluntary stuff and some paid work, and it's just a different type
Oh, of course.
of
I'm a
paradigm. You know what I mean?
firm supporter of the universal basic income like
Okay.
concept. I think like Finland is a big sort of campaigner for it, and they've been testing it out. And I've just saw today that I believe Spain is going to launch their own version,
Okay.
where everyone's payment is going to be topped up to a
What
certain amount.
triggered by the situation?
I believe so. Maybe it's something they've had in the works for a while, but
Mm.
if so, it might have been sped up by this. But yeah, it's basically a universal basic income, in the sense that if your minimum wage or your hours aren't going to meet a certain amount, then the government's going to top it up. I think they said it might cost Spain 3 billion euros a year, but it to me just seems a very sensible decision to make. I personally believe that the way to have made sure that everyone was sort of able to feed their families at the moment would have been a universal basic income,
Mm.
given to everyone, because, you know, as wonderful as the furlough scheme is for a certain number of people, the truth is there are people like myself a lot worse off with, you know, mortgages to pay, rent to pay, families to feed, who have literally been left with nothing.
Yeah.
And if they were to at least have a universal basic income, I understand that the government and journalists love throwing out universal credit, but if you're under 24 like me, that's like £54 a week.
Wow.
And it's just a universal basic income with enough money for people to pay for the necessary things, you know, would have been a brilliant idea.
Cool. Well, watch this space. You never know.
Yeah.
I think now is the time for all those things to be looked at and to be back on the table. And I think the more of these sort of stories that we can share, the more evidence there is as to what could work, what might work, what perhaps won't work, and we can just hopefully raise people's awareness of the, not just, you know, the hardships, but the opportunities as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's
Cool.
all worth discussing.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate your time. Thanks, Elina. Thanks everyone for watching, and do come back and check out the LinkedIn page, the Skills Hive page, and see what else we have in store. We've certainly got quite a few people lined up looking to share their stories and let us know what lockdown's been like for them. So thanks everyone. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.